Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Push Podcast. This is the podcast where we explore the real stories behind what makes entrepreneurs and business owners the successes they are today. I am Jack Ferguson, a small business growth strategist, and I will be your host. I believe the best way to learn and be inspired is to listen to the experiences and stories of those you respect. Their real experiences, their real story, warts and all. Honest storytelling is what this is all about. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast, and don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you are listening to this. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Push Podcast. So today I thought I would try something different and do an in-between episode for you. In the middle of interviewing other business owners about their stories, I thought it was appropriate that I share some of mine from time to time. After all, I'm a business owner myself, and this is a way I can trial these shorter, punchier episodes. So let me know if you enjoy it. Today I want to speak about what it's like to be on the bottom of a social media pylon in your business. So this may not have happened to you before, but if your business is on social media, you're always running the risk. I want to take you back a few years. So I had an idea for a new business and I used social media to get feedback on this concept. Let me share with you the concept of this business so you can see how innocuous something can be to trigger a pylon. Then I'll talk about how it affected me and when it happened and what I learned from it. So the business concept was this. I wanted to teach people guitar through their favorite band's songs. So if you loved the Red Hot Chili Peppers, you'd be taught songs of theirs in a specific order that helped you learn the basics of guitar. I was a guitar teacher in my early years and had seen firsthand some of the problems with teaching. So one of those problems with the way guitar is traditionally taught is that a ton of time is spent on scales and chords with no concept of how the things you are learning actually fit into a song. And I'm sure you believe me when I say that people learn music to play songs. They're not doing it just to do scales. And if you do just chords and scales for months, which is what a lot of teachers do, the student doesn't get to contextualize how these fit into a song. The student often gives up and they don't have a great experience overall. So with his concept of teaching guitar, I wanted to get people learning their favorite songs really quickly so that they had that early momentum and would stick with it. It wouldn't work for really complex music, but plenty of rock music is quite simple, so I was going to focus on that. That's the basics of the concept. That's what it was. So, how to validate whether this is a viable business or not. After speaking to a few people, I put together a landing page. And on this page, I said that I was looking to sell a 12-week course teaching people the basics of guitar via songs from a band they liked. I then targeted these ads to fans of these bands in Australia on social media and did a 2-day experiment to see whether or not people would actually part with their money to buy this product. So these ads ran on Facebook and Instagram. So all good so far. Just a guitar course with a different way of teaching it. No big deal, right? Wrong. I had these ads play over a Friday night and a Friday and was going to check how they were going infrequently over the weekend. But I planned to run the ads for the whole weekend. But when I did my first check on the Saturday morning, the response made me sick. Apparently this concept had really irked a lot of people and they were letting me know exactly what they thought. Calling me everything under the sun, saying what I was proposing was a joke, and introducing me to a new term called a dingleberry. And apparently that's what I was. So perhaps this was a few of the fellas drinking beer on a Friday night and venting on social media. Perhaps they forgot about the comments they made as soon as they made them. But the impact on me was considerable. This had perhaps caught me at a time when I wasn't particularly confident, but I remember my head starting to spin. I had a physiological response to this. Think like a hangover, but a little more intense. The fog was heavy and I remember actually being disoriented. So the first thing I did was something I thought I would never do, and that was turn the ads off. I wanted to stop the bleeding, and this was, of course, at the expense of my commercial goals. And I'm someone who thought if I was ever in a situation like this, that it would be easy to manage. I'd be strong. I'd keep the ads going. But I was wrong. I turned them off. Now, as far as the impact it had, this lasted a few days. The fog didn't lift for 3 to 4 days. So I don't know how other people can manage these kind of pylons. And this was mild compared to what other people get. This was a new business, so I could just shut down the page if I wanted to. And for a more established business, this would be much more difficult. So in comparison, I had it a little easier than others have had it. And remember, this is a physiological response I was feeling. I didn't feel in control of what was happening to me, so I just had to wait it out. And in the midst of all this, I wanted to make mention of one thing in particular, something that a stranger did on social media. So someone jumped into the comment section, one person, and mentioned that what I was doing wasn't for them, but they like my approach and that they think it's appalling how wild the comments section is getting. Please remember, this is just a course about learning guitar. So I owe that guy a lot. It was a bit of relief under the avalanche of abuse. Anyway, what's the point to this story? Well, I wanted to put this out there and say that this is something that can happen, and you don't need to necessarily be doing anything untoward for it to happen to you. Exactly why this particular ad made so many people so angry isn't all that clear to me. Some made a reference to price, some implied that I was making this sound easier than they thought it was going to be. They're not a guitar teacher, how would they know? And others claimed that you don't need lessons and that I'm a terrible person for suggesting anyone would need guitar lessons. Just go on YouTube and figure it out, they would say. Don't listen to this dingleberry. So, of course, I'm expressing the criticisms here in a more palatable way, but the comments were actually much more vile than what I'm making them sound here. So what did I learn? I learned a few things from this, and despite all the abuse, bear in mind that thousands more people clicked through to the landing page than those who wrote these type of comments. Often the vocal, vicious minority can make it seem like everyone hates what you're doing, but there was considerably more people who were at least mildly interested in what I had to say compared to those who were making their negative thoughts very publicly known. And secondly, you don't have to be doing anything wrong to be on the bottom of one of these pylons. Remember, this is just a guitar course. Really easy to scroll past, no need to say much. So it's strange that this triggered this kind of response. But it's social media, you never know. There's nothing wrong with you, it can just be the crazies on Facebook venting. And last but not least, I would say have people around you that you can talk to when you have something like this happen. At the time, I was quite isolated, and since then, I've made sure I've had people in my life that I can speak to about something like this that would just reassure me. Other business owners get it, so make sure you have some of them around you for times like this. So that's what it's like to be on the bottom of a social media pylon. Think lots of head spinning, some disorientation for a few days, and a bit of a knock to the confidence. I do hope it doesn't happen to you, and thanks for tuning in for this week's In-Between-isode. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Push Podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Remember to subscribe, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.